18th, 2014. We're missing our secretary tonight, so Leanne is going to fill in for us. And Leanne, can you take a roll call vote, please?
Mark Berry.
Present.
Leanne Charlotte, present. Julie Gottschall.
Present.
Richard Hack.
Present.
Christine Letchinger, absent. John Rosen.
Present.
Susan Ryder.
Present.
So we have 6, and we have a quorum, so we're ready to begin. We're going to start with our Pledge of Allegiance. All stand. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. So what we start, as we start every meeting, with the opportunity for anybody from the public who would like to address the board, please feel free to do so. Just step to the podium and state your name and address and say what you'd like, if you'd like to say anything at all. We'd encourage anybody, if they're watching at home, to come to meetings and speak, or reach out to us by email. We'll also let everybody know that we have another open mic session at the end of the night, if somebody would like to comment on something they heard or thought of during the meeting. So we will also give you another opportunity to speak in the meeting. Since nobody appears to be rushing for the podium, we'll move on to item 5, and this is an item we have in our agendas now probably for the past 3 meetings, where we give the opportunity to the board, or the public for that matter, to make a recommendation for a future agenda item. If somebody has something we would like to make sure that we have on our list of things to cover going forward, please let us know. If you think something later, send me an email. So we'll move on. We're going to start with our recognition, and we have some recognition for Lake Bluff Elementary School students. Are we starting with you? Or
we're going to turn it over to Margaret St. Clair, our principal.
So that's our principal at the elementary school.
Well, good evening, everybody. We are really excited to have some of our students here this evening, and I'm going to let our staff members, Buffy Stauffer and Laurie, introduce our students to you and tell you all about the project that they have been working on. So Laurie Brown and Buffy Stauffer have worked with these kiddos for the last few weeks, and they'll fill you in on the project.
So my name is Buffy Stauffer. I'm an enrichment specialist at both the elementary school and the middle school. And this veterans project that we've been working on is one of the enrichment team's laptop and lunchtime offerings this year. Students that chose to be part of this project had the opportunity to meet and interview a veteran. And we actually connected with these veterans, these amazing veterans, through our own staff members. So I'm going to go ahead and let the kids tell you about the project.
My name is Grace, and I interviewed Mr. David Coppin. He is Mrs. Carly Quick's dad and a Vietnam veteran.
My name is Hannah, and I interviewed Mr. Jeff Green. He's a friend of Miss Maureen Stosak and is a veteran of the Iraq War.
My name is Jake, and I interviewed Mr. George Duncan. He is Miss Mary Jo Stevenson's dad and a World War II veteran.
My name is Rose, and I interviewed Mr. Al Zalent. He is Mrs. Nancy Goldberg's uncle and also a World War II veteran.
The project has several parts. First, we met in teams to learn more about Veterans Day and chose questions we wanted to ask our veteran.
Then we completed the actual interview, took photos and recorded it in GarageBand.
After we chose the theme for our iMovie and wrote the storyboard, now we have to work to put the iMovie together.
This work includes choosing the right images, listening to the recording of the interview, and helping to tell the story of our veterans' experience.
And we thank you. We're hoping to have all the videos up online, available on the website before winter break. Do you have any questions?
I'm a veteran, and I'll volunteer to be interviewed next year.
Thank you. Great. Come forward. We got you now.
Can you give an example of a question you asked of a veteran? I'm interested in what kinds of questions you asked.
Do you have any memories, special memories that you recall when you were in war?
That's a good question.
Did you enlist or were you drafted into the war?
What was the answer to that question? Do you remember?
My veteran was he enlisted.
It's okay. Okay, thank
Thanks.
you.
Did you get any answers you were surprised by? Did you learn something you were surprised by?
Well, my group was kind of surprised that our veteran actually learned a bunch of Morse code. So when we asked him, when he was explaining stuff he did in World War II, he told us how he would intercept Japanese radios and he'd use Morse code to listen, and he told us all our names in Morse code.
That's pretty cool.
Would anyone have any idea when World War II was? Any guesses?
Somewhere around the 1800s.
You know what? That is a very good guess. It is a very good guess.
That's not too good because I was born before the war.
John's 135.
You guys did an exceptional job. Exceptional job.
Yeah, very good.
Well, and the second part is that I am going to ask them a couple questions in honor of School Board Members Day that was last week, November 15th. And your teachers told you I was going to ask you a couple questions, and you can just tell us whatever you think. So, what do you think a school board member does? Who wants to help us with that?
Organizes all of the like Jump Rope for Heart or any of the major events that happens at school.
So they organize all the major events that happen in school. What else do you guys think they might do?
Oh yes, stupid date.
Do you have any other ideas what they might do? How many hours a week do you think school board members work? On school board things. If you had to guess.
At least 11 to 12 hours a day.
And you know what? On some days, I think some of them do work that many hours. So with all those hours they work, do you think their salary is like a really high salary?
Yeah.
You think it is?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like about how much?
No, what's a high salary?
What would you pay us?
Yeah. What do you think it's worth?
What do you think a school board member might get paid?
Yeah, probably $20 an hour at least.
Okay, very good.
I got my salary in my right pocket.
So, one of the things that I'm going to share with you is that school board members are volunteers in the community. I don't know if you knew that. They run, just, how the president runs for office?
Yeah.
School board members run for the office too. And they do all their hours, all for volunteer. They don't get paid. There's only, I think, one state I know pays their school board members, but all of our school board members work for free. And you know why they work for free? Because they care about all of your education and your teaching and learning. And so they oversee all those things, like they know that we've got Jump Rope for Heart, and their big thing is to make sure that we meet all of our goals in the district. And that would probably fall under our goal of students really knowing their communities and volunteering in their communities. Do you think that might happen?
Yeah. So,
contrary to what you may think, school board members don't make the decision on if we're going to have a snow day or not. So, however, they do ask me about it. Mr. Rosen told me last week after church he wanted to know if we were going to have a snow day because people were at church were asking him that. So he wanted to know what we were going to be doing with that. And we're not going to have any snow days this year because the weather's going to be good.
Look at the sadness in her face. She's kidding.
So our school board members really, they spend a lot of time, they do a lot of reading, they have to come here and speak publicly, and they have to go to community events. And it's all because they care about your education and they care about you and their community. So we want to thank you tonight for coming, but first I'm going to have you help me thank our school board members, if that's all right. Behind you on the table, there are blue cups. And if you could grab a cup or two and make sure that all of our school board members get this special Lake Bluff cup. And you can you come right up here and you can give them to one of the school board members and shake their hand. You can just come right up here, right in front of them. You can come right in front of them. There you go.
You guys did a great job.
And,
Thank you
and
so much.
you can't go yet.
Got it? Her one too.
All right, so now before you leave though, Mr. Berry is what's called our board president, and he is going to give you a special award. It's a little tag that says #1 star student. So I'm going to have him give those. So if you just want to come up this way, so he doesn't, you can just give him.
So you know, this is, you guys talk to your veterans at all? Did any of them show you anything that looked like that?
Dog tags?
Yeah.
It's called a dog tags?
And so every new soldier gets a dog tag that has their name, their
Rank, serial number.
Just for identification purposes. So you each get a dog tag. Thank you so much.
We want to thank you for spending your night tonight coming and talking to us.
It's a necklace.
Thank you for helping us celebrate our board members too. You guys did a great job. Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys. We appreciate it.
And we really weren't sure who had more fun in these interviews, the students, their teachers, or the veterans, because they all came out just really getting so much from the experience. Buffy and Larry also were the ones who were responsible for having the children make book trailers that were at the book fair at Lake Bluff Elementary School. So Larry's on our enrichment team as a technology specialist, and Buffy's on our team as an English language arts enrichment specialist. So that's one way that they work with our students.
You know, just a comment for the kids. I did the exact same thing in first grade when I was in school in 1969, 1,000 years ago. And I remember nothing about grade school except for that.
Wow.
The stories that Mr. Scalzo told me back in 1969 were amazing. So you'll remember that. It's a really cool thing.
Before Mrs. St. Clair gives her report, I know all of you have to go home and do homework and get a good night's sleep. And our board members then have to work on their homework because they've been preparing for this meeting. So we want to let all of you head home. Thank you again for coming. We really, really appreciate it.
Thank you, students. Did a great job.
Thanks, guys.
And thank you, teachers, too.
Thank you very much to our two. Actually, if our two teachers could come up, we also have tags for you.
Oh, nice.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
And we'll be sure to let you know when those links are up for the iMovies, because they'll be great to see.
Buffy, I'm not a veteran, but my brother's a veteran, and he would gladly do it by Skype. He could do it from Antarctica, which would be pretty cool.
Oh,
He's done it before. He Skyped from there before. So
Actually, we can talk to board members and see if they have family members and friends, and we can, and maybe ask administrators, because I think everyone has a vet in a family, and that might be fun for the kids.
It would be great. We actually started by talking to the American Legion, the local.
Oh, good idea.
We weren't making as many connections as we needed, and so we branched out to staff, and we realized that that was really a great place to make some connections, and so naturally just branched out.
Right.
It's become a very large project. These interviews were very rich, and for a very, the interviews are good. They're going to be pretty good.
Great. Great.
Awesome.
Thank
Thank you.
It's especially rewarding for older veterans because those of us in the Vietnam era weren't quite as recognized at that point as the later vet. So it's a nice thing to do.
They were very emotional.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Stay warm.
Thank you, everybody.
So we're gonna keep
Well,
Mrs. St. Clair up there?
Just to finish up, I'll wrap up our report. Nate and I are going to talk to you a little bit. We talked last month about our team meetings and how many team meetings we have and how much time we spend at team meetings, but we thought it would be helpful this evening to talk to you a little bit about what we do at team meetings and what teachers do. So it starts with scheduling. So in the spring or summer, when we go to plan our master schedule, one of the things that we really look to do is provide some common planning time for our teachers on grade level teams. That's important to kind of build into that school day so that they do have some common time to meet during the day to have their team meetings. Some do meet after school as well, but they all do have a common planning time during the day that they can get together. At their team meetings, they put their agendas together. They share that responsibility at Lake Bluff Elementary School. It alternates by the trimester where teachers kind of take turns being the lead for their team. They put together those agendas prior to their meetings. Those are shared out with administrators as well. Tracy and I try to get to as many team meetings as we can. And at the team meetings, a lot of things happen. Curriculum planning and development for sure is one. We do a really great job, I have found, visiting classrooms in really staying aligned and pacing all right around the same pace for all the teachers at a grade level. Certainly their styles are a little bit different, but their pacing and their content is the same. So that planning occurs at team meetings as well as other times during the week. They also meet with the enrichment and support staff. So Laurie Brown and Buffy Stauffer, they come to team meetings as well as our special education staff. They might come for a certain topic, or a team might invite them in to help them plan for support and enrichment for students. Also in implementing new curriculum, they'll say, how can we differentiate? And the enrichment and support team would be there to help them plan for their curriculum. Our team rep meeting, which are grade level and department level representatives that meet with administration once a month, they then come back to the grade level teams to communicate back and forth. So they're kind of the bridge between the building administrators and all the staff. So the team might generate topics to have at our administrative team rep meeting, or vice versa. We may talk about something at that meeting that we say, hey, go back and check with your team and see how they feel about how maybe the Halloween parade went, and they'll talk to their teams and we communicate that way, kind of an organized way to communicate. Another thing they do is training. Jay has he's scheduled to come to a team meeting next week to show the 5th grade team how to use the new purchasing processes. So we use those for training and also to train about evaluation and how to use the forms in TeachScape and those other items. Also scheduling and working on testing and assessment. So they really have to plan out those team meetings in a purposeful way so that they are sure that they can get all those things done. That's why oftentimes they do meet after school as well. They have a little more time. But Nate's going to talk to you a little bit more about the middle school. Theirs is structured a little bit different. Thank you.
Thanks.
Any questions about Lake Bluff Elementary's team meetings?
Those take place during the regular school day then?
They take place during the regular school day. If they do meet after school, that's sort of a voluntary type of thing. Like today, 3rd grade met, they do meet actually every week for about an hour after school on Tuesdays. But we do have that common plan time so that everybody can attend during the day.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Good evening. So there are definitely some similarities between how team meetings are used at the middle school compared to the elementary school, and of course some differences as well. We do find it to be incredibly valuable. I know there are plenty of schools that struggle to find the time to allow teachers to have common time to meet. As I've interviewed teachers over the years, it often is one of those questions that I am asked. Do you have common planning time? Are there team meetings? How are they structured? So I'll give you a quick overview on some of the answers to those questions, but yes, the answer is yes, we do have common planning time and we do have team meetings. Generally speaking, our team meetings, by the way, we have a 6th grade team, 7th grade team, 8th grade team, also a fine arts team and a special ed team. So those are the 5 teams that meet within the building. And most of their meetings start with some form of sharing or celebrating, just kind of a few minutes at the beginning of that meeting, and it could be something personal that maybe occurred over the weekend. It could be a celebration of something that occurred in class, or a breakthrough that a student made, or a connection that they made in the classroom, and it's a nice way to start those meetings. Probably some of the procedural kind of functional things that happen in most every meeting you would see is the coordination of tests, quizzes, long-term projects. They're looking at the calendar, looking ahead. The teachers are working together to hopefully not overload students with too much at one time. That's a part of those kind of standing agenda items. We do have agendas for every team meeting. All of the teachers have access to that agenda through Google Docs, so that as things come up, they can add those to the agenda to discuss on a particular day. The team facilitator, who is the team leader of the team, would coordinate all of those different items and help to run the meetings once they get to their meeting time. Some of the other things that they're working to coordinate include upcoming school events. That could be assemblies, that could be standardized testing. They're working through MAP testing schedules, or they're working through the park testing schedules, changes to the schedule because of a special event in the morning. All of those things that we as teachers want to stay current on, and it's always helpful to have a reminder of. Those things are, of course, discussed during a team meeting as well. Planning and preparation for advisory lessons and cross-curricular activities, that often will occur during team meeting time. Student concerns sometimes will be discussed. A celebration, as I mentioned earlier. Hey, we really had something that's working for this student in my class, and I wanted to share it with you in case it might be helpful to you, would be an example of the kind of thing that might come through in a team meeting. Sometimes there are health-related issues that a parent requests that our teachers be aware of, and that would be an opportunity for us to share that information with the teachers so that they're aware. And it could be a teacher who's seeking some input on a student in their advisory. Very often that would be a good time to gather some information either for themselves or information that may have been requested by a parent. That's a good opportunity for teachers to do that. On occasion, a parent may come in to meet with an entire team at one time. That's an opportunity for them. It's not a typical thing that would happen, but certainly sometimes it's worthwhile to do that, and so that does occur from time to time. Teacher training, as Margaret mentioned, things like computer tech things that might need to be presented in a smaller group as opposed to a big faculty meeting. That's a good time for that. How to order supplies, handling of student records, maybe some peer-to-peer sharing. Somebody's gone to a workshop and found some really exciting and valuable information. They can come back then and share it with their team. Even though not everybody may have gotten to go, they can get some value from that teacher who did attend the workshop. It's an opportunity for our special ed teachers to remind teachers or update teachers on IEP accommodations or 504 accommodations, and so everybody's current and aware of everything that is going on with the students in their class and their accommodations. So that's helpful as well. I think it's also worth mentioning that those team meetings don't occur in isolation. In fact, they work very well with some of the other meetings that occur regularly. So team meetings being the one level, if you will, very often items are brought to a team meeting, problems may be brought to a team meeting. Many of those can be solved at that level. They may not be able to be solved at that level, and very often those meetings would generate topics for the team facilitators. I meet with those people every week on a Thursday morning, and so we are building those agendas from the team meetings. Sometimes the team facilitator group will be able to hammer out those details as a group, and it's simply a matter of sharing back at the next team meeting some of those decisions and going over the notes at some of those meetings. It could be that at a team facilitator meeting, we work together and realize, hey, this is more appropriate for the whole group. And so we may actually begin our process of planning for the upcoming faculty meetings that way as well. So they do work together, and they sort of pyramid, team meeting being at the bottom, team facilitator meeting, and then the less frequent monthly, actually twice a month, faculty meetings. So that's sort of how they fit. Certainly part of those team meetings are both sharing out from faculty, from team facilitators, and vice versa, feeding information both ways. That's a lot, I know. Any questions about it? I appreciate you asking the question. It got me thinking about how we use that time, and I'm sure I missed some things, but that was the quick overview.
You mentioned that the Thursday morning meeting for the team facilitators, right? And then twice a month the faculty meetings.
Yes.
So, and I can appreciate, maybe I can't, but I can only imagine how difficult the scheduling must be to get all the teachers free at the same time, but for a team, right? So when do you run those team meetings for the 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade?
Good question. Thank you. In the middle school, we have the advantage of having common plan time, which means that if you're an academic teacher, your students then go off to their fine arts classes.
Right.
That's when you have your common time. So that's 2 periods a day. That's true of all of those academic teams. Now, the fine arts teams, they have 2 periods in their day when all of their students are in an academic class. Now, they may not all be back to back. They may be spread out throughout the day, but that's what allows us to meet as a group. The only exception to that is the special ed team. They do not have common time throughout the day to meet. So they do theirs on Wednesday morning during advisory. That happens to be when all of our Wacky Wednesday advisory groups are meeting, and that frees them up to meet for 25 minutes at a time. So it's a shorter period of time for the special ed team.
How long are your periods? 25 minutes?
Our periods are 40 minutes apiece.
So when
this is during advisory for 25 minutes.
When you say 2 periods, though, it's 1 team plan and 1 personal plan, right, for each teacher?
Well, yeah, you could look at it that way on those days of team meetings. That's
I mean, they can choose to meet as a team, but 1 per their contract is their own team time, plan time, and the other is a team.
Yeah, and I can tell you that all of the teams have structured their meetings so that there's a team meeting for every team on Tuesday and every team on Thursday. I commit to trying to be at one of those meetings a week. If I can do 2, I do, but it's not always possible.
And so the Monday, Wednesday, Friday in that example are given over to personal plan time. Is that right, during those same periods? Okay.
And the elementary school does not have that built in their schedule. They were able to swing it for a couple times a week in general after a lot of maneuvering of their schedule, whereas with the middle school schedule, it's scheduled that way.
Right. I would say personal plan and collaboration. There's a lot of meetings that don't necessarily involve an entire team, but would involve a smaller group, and that would be their opportunity to meet together. And that's also when all of the special ed meetings occur, the annual IEP meetings or the initial IEP meetings. That would be the time when those meetings would occur as well.
So then anything else, sorry to interrupt, like staff meetings, I heard you
Yeah.
about that. That's after school.
Yeah.
That's going to fit everybody at
Yeah.
the same time.
Yeah.
Likewise with
Right.
IEP meetings, it would be an after school time. And if we share with the middle school, then we wait till they're finished and we start later than the elementary day is over. So those happen outside of the school day.
Yeah, your schedule must really be interesting.
That's a good one.
That's the challenge.
Wow. Yeah.
We have 8 grade levels and
Yeah. Right. Interesting. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Just a few other things to be aware of. Actually, today was our first Bluffer Buddy advisory. I tweeted out some pictures and even a video link. It was outstanding. Our Bluffer Buddy leaders did just a great job today. I wanted to mention that. Last Friday was the end of the first trimester. Teachers are busily working hard. They're working hard to put everything together for the report cards that will be sent home on November 25th. For parents that are watching, a reminder, PowerSchool Parent Access has been taken down during this period of time to allow final grades to be put in, comments to be put in. It will be turned back on at the end of the week, this coming Friday, but that will be showing the new trimester information. Choral concert, that's tomorrow night at 7 o'clock. Looking forward to that. We have a band concert on Thursday night at 7 o'clock. And coming up is the gazebo lighting. That's December 6th. We'll have choral students who will actually be performing there at 5 o'clock. At this rate, it might be very, very cold and snowy, but we're looking forward to it nonetheless. Couple of things in terms of meetings and field trips coming up. Washington, D.C. trip. I'm pleased to announce 92 of 105 students in 8th grade will be participating, which is a huge growth from years past. Big part of that, I think, is moving it to February when things aren't quite as busy. The D.C. trip, as a reminder, is February 18th through the 20th. Springfield Parent Informational Meetings coming up on December 10th at 7 o'clock. And that's our 6th grade Springfield trip that we'll be talking about on May 15th. So, thank you. If there are any questions for me?
Thank you, Jay.
Thanks. That's okay. Thanks.
All right, item 7, PTO report, which we're not going to be doing tonight. And then going on to item 7, that was 7C7D, is the Alliance for Excellence report, which Emily McBain will give to us.
Hello. We on Alliance have had a very active and exciting fall. On Wednesday, October 29th, we hosted the Alliance 25th anniversary reception, and thank you to so many school board members who attended. We had a really nice turnout, almost 50 people from the community with various connections to Alliance, former board members, donors, community members, and Dr. Edward Noyes, who was the superintendent when District 65 when Alliance was created. So it's been great to re-engage with him. And he brings a lot of enthusiasm and a great story to tell. In the first week of November, our fall fundraising letters mailed out to all District 65 users and Alliance donors, and we've had a good response already. We look forward to hopefully surpassing our goal of raising $25,000 to mark 25 years. Then on November 11th, we had our grant meeting to support the funding of teacher requests to enrich curriculum. And that evening was a very, again, busy and exciting night. We voted to fund $13,579 in grant requests from teachers, which included science lab equipment, articulation therapy materials, a level literacy intervention plan, an LBS mosaic project, which is contingent on your approval and would be co-funded with PTO, teacher timers to support executive functioning skills, and the Marcy Chesson Memorial Children's Book Project. We were thrilled to be in position, especially this early in the year, to support these high priority needs. However, I have to point out that during the discussion on what to fund and how to fund it, we did experience some difficulty in our conversations and our decisions working within the district's no contingencies budget. When we review a grant and decide on the funding, we look at many different factors. Does it align with our mission to enrich the curriculum with innovative, unique, and diverse educational experiences? Does it meet the students' needs and help the teachers to advance their teaching? And is the funding of the item or the materials or the program outside of the district's budget? With the new policy, we can't get answers to that question. And the request may be a district expense, but the teachers need to wait until the next budget is drafted to get those answers. After much thorough and meaningful discussion, the Alliance Board voted to fund the grant request with the students' needs prioritized. And at the end of the night, we were proud of our decision to do so. However, many of these votes challenged our mission, and we need to be careful not to become the contingency plan for the no contingencies budget. So as you review your policies for next year, I just want to make you aware of one of the consequences and challenges of that policy. We will vote again on grants in April. However, if there are teacher requests that come before that point, we will entertain them and discuss them. Any questions?
You know, I think one of the things that came from this is a learning experience for all of us. Some great intervention materials came available after the budget has been done. In the past, we had contingency money that we could have gone ahead and bought the materials for, but we don't have that at this point. So in discussion with grants, the grant was submitted and there was some discussion with Alliance, and I think nobody really wanted to wait till next year. So that's what Emily is referring to on that piece. The other piece, though, that I talked a little bit with Mark, and we're going to talk about a little bit later in the year in the form of a policy discussion, is where this mosaic at the elementary school will go. Because there's some discussion about putting in the front entrance to the building. And with it being a new building, I just want to make sure that the board is okay with ground rules on where things go on, major things go on walls there, before we go ahead and do it. So we will be discussing that in the form of guidelines from a policy.
It was also my understanding that in the past, the contingency was established for unexpected items that were to be allocated. But there's no reason why you couldn't identify what you needed ahead of time and make that part of the upcoming budget. So it doesn't become a contingency, it becomes part of the actual budget.
And I think in an ideal world, yes, that would be great if all those needs could be identified. I think, though, sometimes, especially with teachers working with kids, that they learn about a program that could be implemented, and it would be great to do it in more of a timely fashion than to wait. So
for example, in the example that Jean gave, there is a literacy program that we use in grades K1 and 2 that suddenly in October came out with the 3rd through 5th grade edition of their program. It's a natural extension of our program already, but it's not something that I had previously budgeted for, because that was not something that I expected to come on the market during this school year. So the teachers were in the position of either we wait until the next budget cycle, which is something that they could do, or seek grant opportunities from other places, Alliance, Learning Disabilities Association, so that could.
Let me, just as an example, what would that have cost?
The grant was for a total of $4,750.
If that's our job, we should be paying for that.
Right.
I can't justify saying we can't spend over the budget by $4,000, even if it were to bring us over the budget, which I'm not entirely sure it would. I mean, that's crazy to expect an alliance to fund that.
And that's a conversation we can have. I think, you know, we're all sticking with the budget
because when we put our budgets together in the spring, we budgeted for all of the knowns and for all of the things that we knew that we were going to need to purchase this year, and for the renewal of licenses and for all of those other sorts of things. We can't, and we asked our teachers to work with us to put together things that they knew were coming out on the market over the coming year.
It sounds like we need a policy discussion regarding what it means to budget, you know.
So contingency, we just did, maybe I should just, the contingency to me, in my experience, is something that just sits there for no reason. It becomes potentially a slush fund kind of thing. And we wanted it when we, I think, decided and sat down to do the budget to be more specific. But that doesn't mean you can't budget if you expect a change or just anticipate a change, that we ought to be thinking about it and budgeting for that within the context of textbooks or whatever it happens to be.
But we have it budgeted so tightly that in this district we can't come up with $4,500 or something.
That's crazy.
I don't think so.
So I don't think we do. So we have a cold snap, right? And so we pay twice as much for fuel this summer or this winter. Are we not going to heat the building? No. Are we B, going to ask the Alliance to pay for our heat? No. We're going to spend more than what we budgeted. I mean,
so we probably should bring this back for discussion because, see, in that case, I see that as a choice, and with curriculum, I see it as we don't have it in the budget.
Yeah.
And so
maybe I'm not understanding the program sufficiently. It sounds like it was obvious that we should take advantage of it.
And the Alliance Board, we could have voted no.
Sure.
We have that within our right, and the board voted yes, as long as it could. We put a contingency, to use the word again, in there that if it could be purchased and implemented by January 5th, then we would fund it. Because it was so highly valued by the teachers, and there's proof that it's successful and it's touching a good number of students. It's not a disposable program. It's continued from year to year, and it is enriching their education. But it was a very thorough discussion, and
well, thank you. I'll tell you, thank you. I appreciate you doing it. It sounds like a great program. It sounds like the obvious decision, and I'm so grateful that the Alliance is there to serve as that net.
And it's been a learning experience because I think that I do think bringing it back and discussing it will probably be a good idea.
Well, let's make sure we learn from this and bring.
Well, maybe we should have talked about it before it went to the Alliance.
Right.
You know, I mean, because really, I appreciate Alliance supporting that. I think we're all working together, but I also think that, you know, I love seeing Alliance fund violins and ukuleles and science equipment that wouldn't necessarily fall in the mainstream of what we fund.
Right.
You know,
The other, I mean, just looking through Jay this month, you included payments over $2,500 and another category, payments over $1,000. There are many, many, many categories in here that could not have been anticipated.
Yeah.
Everything that we've had so far this year, we've had budgeted.
Even Bluffington's?
We have an account for that. Yeah.
No. I mean, I agree with what's been said here. I think we ought to be.
If I could just say, sort of the current understanding of our administrative team and amongst our teachers is that the board set a budget. The budget was for an amount that for reasonably expected expenses. And so what we did is that we went back, we looked at our expenses for the last several years to forecast out what we were going to be spending this year. If we were going to go over that budget, then that should come out of reserves, because that was the directive that was given to us by the Board of Education.
Right.
So when we're talking about contingencies, I think that the discrepancy in our definition here is that I would see a contingency being an added amount in the budget for unexpected expenses that come up. But certainly we could spend out of reserves if that is what the board.
And the difficulty with that is that contingency can become much different. If everybody budgets a 10% contingency, all of a sudden you got millions. And so you have to have some controls in place, and yet I think you have to be as specific as you can when you budget as well, but also expect that you're going to have an occasion where a $3,000 expense perhaps is going to come up, and that's understood. I think the board would certainly understand that and expect it in some cases.
Can we take a half a step back to like that third or fourth agenda item? We added an agenda item for the future.
Yes, right.
Take an agenda item for a not too distant meeting where we have this discussion in much more depth. Yeah. Okay.
So, Dr. Sophie, was that your understanding of the contingency? I just want to make sure that I am not.
That's my understanding too.
Okay. That I'm not misdirecting teachers or other
I think and as I've shared with the board, this year we've really been working on our conversation, all of us in an administrative team. When we have discussions, we'll say, is it in the budget? That's our very first question.
And that's the right question.
No, we're a work in progress, right?
Yes,
we're a work in
that's
progress. Nobody's pointing fingers at anything, and I really appreciate you guys taking the time to think about this and point it out to us.
Right.
Because there's an obvious oversight.
Unintended consequences.
Right. And so nobody's pointing any fingers at anybody. It's just a very good point that we're all going to learn from and make better going forward.
No, I mean, the process went exactly as it should. The approvals went through. Kevin gave an excellent explanation of why the decisions were what they were. But the conversation we had was so meaningful that
obviously you needed to hear it.
And that's fantastic.
Thank you.
Yes.
And please do that in the future if stuff comes up that we don't anticipate.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
They make it a learning experience.
Yes.
Thank you for doing that for us.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks, guys. Okay, so now we're going to move on to item 7E, which is our finance and operations report. If Jay would like to
Just
add
have to
anything
move
here.
the microphone or come to the podium.
I know you have another spot on the agenda later on, so.
Did you want me to talk about the community engagement, or were you going to cover that in your
We're going to
superintendent?
cover that. That's later on the agenda.
Okay. As Margaret hinted at in her talk about her team meetings, I've visited all the schools to help train the staff on some new purchasing procedures. We have implemented some streamlined purchasing procedures using our software system and taking advantage of vendors like Amazon.com to make it easy for teachers to purchase their materials and to improve the internal controls that we have so that we're able to see all the purchases before they go out and assign them to account numbers and as in close to real time as possible reflect the expenses in the budget so that we know where we stand relative to our budget.
So Jay, I think a good example, because this is something that's come up in discussions amongst all of us before. Give us an example. If you're a teacher and you want to order, we call them critters, because the science classrooms order critters for different projects. And you're going to order them from Amazon.com. I want you to kind of walk through the procedure, because I think it's important for board members, especially you're in charge of oversight. So you need to know through all the different levels that it goes through at this point.
So for most purchases, especially the ones that are done through the web, a teacher will log on to Skyward, which is our school-based accounting system, and they'll put in a requisition. The requisition is the request to buy whatever item it is. They will put in the items that they want to buy as a description and assign it an account number. They each have their own account number, and it will reserve that money in the budget. So it'll say there's $1,000 left in the budget this year. You want to order $200 worth of items. I'm going to set that $200 aside, reduce your available balance. So now there's only $800 available the next time someone goes in to purchase something. Then it goes through an approval process. So it goes to the principal electronically first, and they can look at it and see and approve the expense. And they're going to be looking at the appropriateness of the expense as well as the account number to make sure there's money in the account. Then it goes to the business office and I see it. And then after my approval, it goes to Dr. Sophie. And that's an example for a teacher. If it's a special ed account number, it may go through Kevin. It depends on who's the budget manager for that particular account. And then in the case of Amazon.com, they get a PO number. So once a PO is generated, they log on to Amazon and they can check out, basically put it in their shopping cart and check out using that purchase order number. It goes onto our district credit line, and it can only be shipped to a district address. So they don't have there's no way to mix it up with personal purchases because they can't put in a credit card number. And then then I also get another email from Amazon saying, hey, there's these purchases out here. Do you approve them? So I have one last opportunity to review the purchase, make sure it has a purchase order number, that it's legitimate, and then release it. And then the order is placed, it gets shipped to the teacher within a few days. And when we get the bill from Amazon.com, it's got all the purchase order numbers listed, so we can easily go and link the purchase order back to the invoice and in an efficient way basically charge all those accounts and cut a check and send it off to the vendor.
So when we have our audit next year, you're going to see the auditor is going to deal a lot with internal controls, and they're going to specifically ask, how do you purchase and who gets all the level of approvals? By the time it gets to me, when I approve it, then I always get a message back that says, okay, there's X amount left in this fund. I think once it said the fund was over purchased.
Right, and there will be times. There will be times when the line item in itself is over, but then we can look at the total and reallocate funds within the budget on a periodic basis to alleviate that.
And using the software that we do, is this fairly efficient for staff? Like they don't have to chase you down and worry about if they got this approval.
Right.
That just all happens.
No, I think there was a lot of anxiety at the beginning of the year because I was putting in new purchasing procedures like this, and we didn't have the opportunity to get in front of teachers and train them, both because I was busy and because they were very busy. They don't have a lot of available time. So I've had a very positive response. Our software integrates with websites, so it becomes a web shopping experience instead of looking at catalogs and typing things in. So it's very efficient for the teachers. And then, as you say, it's not, they can at any point in the system go into the system and see where the requisition is in the approval chain. So if it's hung up on Kevin because he's at a conference, they can go and see that. But we've been approving them in a very quick manner. There's no paper, things don't get lost. It's an electronic ordering, so things don't get misplaced. We don't forget to fax in the purchase order. And hopefully it'll cut down on the time it takes to receive items, improve just the efficiency for the teachers and for the business office, and allow us to manage our budget well.
And do we have commitments on how fast we respond to this stuff? Or?
We've not committed to a time, but we just try to do it as quickly as possible. What I have committed to is I've told them, expect it to take a couple of days. If you have an urgent need for something and you can't wait, then just notify us, call us, send us an email, and we'll go in and make a special effort to move that one along.
A couple days sounds pretty.
I actually always do mine within 5 hours of getting the email.
Yeah, whenever you log in the system, it kind of tells you
really
you've got stuff to address.
I mean, it sounds like great controls. I was just curious, like how much that could be hanging people up but it sounds like it's probably pretty efficient too, so that's great.
Well, and it's not, you can do it on your phone. Yeah. So, for instance, when I was at the conference, that was something I still check for twice a day because I don't want anybody held up. So I think it's just a matter, and I think we've all agreed that as soon as we get them, we're going to approve them as soon as possible so we don't hold them up.
It's just a learning experience, people getting familiar with the new account numbers and getting familiar with how to use the software, but Margaret took a poll after I went and presented to their staff, and the vast majority of the responses were kind of 3s and 4s, which means I could do this myself, or I could teach someone else to do it. And there were only a couple of people who said, I'm not sure, I need to try it out. And I'm also going to be talking to individual team leaders, and they're going to be the expert for their grade level team. So if people don't do a lot of ordering, they can consult with them and have somebody right there on staff that can help them do it.
Does that same type of process apply to other vendors other than Amazon?
Yeah, that was just an example. In fact, Amazon is really not integrated with our software. They have their own, business ordering system. We currently have 6 vendors that are integrated with our software: 2 office supply vendors, a technology vendor, school specialty where you can buy just about anything, and so it's very easy to order from them. But we're also able to pretty efficiently email purchase orders to any vendor that will accept emailed ones. There are still a few that will only take faxes, but we.
Really?
Yeah, believe it or not.
If you can get 80% of your orders through our 6 vendors that are electronic, we also get pricing. So I work with their representatives to negotiate bulk pricing for the district. So fewer vendors just means better pricing, lower transactions costs,
which has been helpful.
more efficiency,
Good.
fewer invoices to pay. So we've been kind of working towards doing that.
Anybody? Questions? Thanks, Jay. All right, now we're going to move to Dr. Rubenstein, who will share some information regarding district and school report cards.
In your board packets this evening, under the consent agenda, you will find information about the Illinois School Report Card, which were released on October 31st. We are required by law to post this information on our website and make it available to any district stakeholders, and so we plan to do that in the near future. The report cards, which have, it's the state report card that has won awards nationally for its easy use and overall design, measures things including academic growth, student success rates on standardized achievement, student characteristics, attendance and mobility rates, school environment factors, district finances, and then other educator measures. This is the second year of a redesign, and I will be giving some comparisons to other school districts later on in the board meeting.
It's an annual, it's refreshed every year, or?
Yes. Refreshed every year.
I would point out to our huge viewership at home that if they want to drill down in this kind of information, it's all available online at illinoisreportcard.com. And the Tribune recently had a big article on all this and gave it rave reviews.
Yeah.
Even in their editorial, they spoke about it, about how valuable it is. And you can pull up all of the districts in the area, so if you think that we're not doing our job, please take a look. We score pretty favorably on these things. So
you will see shortly in the presentation about how favorably we compare to other districts in the area. And really a lot to be proud of for Lake Bluff families and for the state for taking a lead on the redesign of these report cards. Which
I think it'd be a great resource for realtors. People helping,
Yeah,
trying to sell in this community too. So it might be
an education program for realtors? Wouldn't that be?
Actually, we're going to have one in the winter, and I'll be recruiting some of you to come and attend it with me. So I'm glad you brought that up, because I'll ask you first.
But nobody can argue that this isn't neutral data. That it's not biased. We didn't put it together to favor our district.
The only portion of the report card that the district submits information for is on the last page of each of the school report cards, where it says school highlights. That's all information that the district puts in itself. But the rest of the information, including the fast facts, academic growth, school environment, all of that is information that is sent out by the state.
Great. Any questions on this stuff? All right, now for the most exciting item of the evening, your weekly president's report, your monthly president's report.
Well, since you're 135, you might need to.
Most of this is 99.9% of this I'm going to go into NSSED update again, but just so everybody knows, John and I as well, along with Gene and Kevin and maybe Jay, we're all going to the III conference this weekend. It's the and Terry too, yeah. Going to the Association of School Board members, business officials, and administrators. Is that the 3 different organizations?
ISA, ISB, and
ISBO.
ISBO.
Yeah. So it's 3 days of conferences. John and I are signed up for a whole day-long conference on negotiation strategies on Friday, and we get to pick and choose what we're doing the other 2 days. It's pretty long, but it's also very interesting. The amount of contact you have with other board members from other districts is a really healthy dose of perspective. So we'll give you a report when we get back. NSSED. There's a lot going on at NSSED right now. Last time I talked to you, I gave you a couple brief. I'll give you a very brief highlight of what we talked about because this is all placed together. Our superintendent is going to be replaced at the end of 2016. His contract is running out. We have recently enacted policy change at NSSED to move from a 2-tiered governance structure to a single-tier governance structure, to flatten out the governance structure from executive committee governing board to just a governing board, with the idea being that it brings administration at NSSED closer to the front lines, to really feel what the districts feel when it comes to our taxpayers' demands. For anybody watching at home, I'm talking about NSSED, which is the North Shore Special Education District, which is the cooperative 18 schools that we all are a member of to provide services to special education kids. Not all, but those that go above and beyond what we can handle in-house. We also talked about the cooperative has presented a new pricing model after considerable pressure for several years from all the districts in the cooperative to change the way they price, their structure, their pricing model. And basically what that does is change the amount of their of the IDEA funds, the Individuals with Disabilities in Education Act funds that come from the federal government. In our case, it will change from, they will, instead of holding 30% of our funds, they will now hold 25% of our funds. In a larger district, this is where it's a little inequity based on large districts, small districts. Larger districts are reduced down to, instead of 30, all the way down to 15% of their funds. So they drew a line, and larger districts will benefit more than smaller districts. They're increasing program tuition costs and increasing membership fees while reducing the amount of government funds, the federal government funds that they hold. For us, the net effect right now is it doesn't look like it changes how much money we spend at NSSED all that much. It just moves money around a little bit. Please step in at any time and correct me if I'm wrong. In general, the big districts, the heavy user districts are the winners. Some of them are saving upwards of a couple $100,000 a year. The governing board is being forced, and I use that word forced, to vote on this in December. We had our last meeting in November 12th, last Wednesday, and there was extensive conversation by several boards, school districts, that they were concerned about this new governance model not doing enough, not going far enough. One of the big arguments was made is that if districts continue to pull out, there's 2 districts, and I'll get into this more, 2 districts have submitted their paperwork to pull out, or are about to. If they haven't, I will clarify that in a moment. How does that new pricing model hold up? And we've been pushing at SSED to run what we call a sensitivity model. So does this pricing structure hold if 1 district pulls out, if 2 districts pulls out, if 3 districts pulls out? How does it affect us if we're the last guy standing? Because the fixed costs don't really change. I heard the analogy of it's a balloon. You just keep squeezing it, it goes from the fixed cost, it goes from one place to another, it doesn't change. So they're all things we've got to be aware of. That vote is in December. To clarify the district withdrawal issue, I mentioned last time that North Shore District 112, which is the Highland Park Highwood K-8, had submitted its paperwork to withdraw. I think it was effective this coming June. They have not specifically voted to do it. They will be rescinding and resubmitting that paperwork to extend it a year. They want to give, what they're saying is they want to give the new pricing model a chance at NSSED to see if that helps them work through their issues. They also have so much on their plate right now. They're closing 7 buildings and something like that, that they just thought that this was too much to do. Deerfield, I don't know if I think I mentioned last time, but they were talking about it. Well, effective, they have already approved, the board has already approved that they will move ahead and submit their letter to withdraw from the cooperative, also effective June 2016. So 112 has pushed it out a year to June 2016, and 109 Deerfield is voted to submit its withdrawal paperwork, and that would be June 2016. That's right, they're both aligned. With that in mind, I went to a meeting, so this NSACD meeting was last Wednesday. That went late, 10 o'clock, 10:30.
Sure did.
The very next night, I sat at a meeting, at a joint meeting of the District 115-67, so both Wake Forest boards, for this express purpose of talking about this only. They had a special meeting. But they have joint meetings already on their calendar, and sometimes they are scrambling to fill it with agenda items, but this was not. This was an easy item to put on that agenda. The crux of the meeting, at least the meeting, was kicked off by a presentation by Alan Ellis. Alan is the 115 business administrator, but his position is aligned with whoever does it for 67. And he makes this kind of, and he developed a very clear, really bright guy. It was very good to talk to him. A very clear model that shows, and this is kind of his words, that NSSCD's pricing model is fundamentally flawed if it is more attractive for low-use districts like us, like Lake Forest. We're not super heavy users, to be a non-user than a user. So it's more attractive for us to be a non-user than a user, given the current pricing structure.
And purchase the services rather.
That's what I was just going to say. And assuming they are still available to us, purchase NSACD services at a non-user rate. Because then we don't have the IDEA thing, they're not holding that back, and we don't pay the membership rate. We pay an out-of-district or an out-of-cooperative rate. So Alan ran through this whole analysis where he had to make a lot of assumptions on the numbers, but I think, back to the envelope rule of thumb, it was probably ballpark correct. And I would also ask, one of the things that I'm going to go into, like some of my concerns, is that I don't think Jay's seen this. I really think that you guys need to see his numbers just to make sure you're really good.
I think Jay may have seen some of it in one of his business groups.
Yeah, so Alan met with 112 and 109, the business managers from these other two districts. And that's kind of got his thinking from them, and that's what's driving them to make the move that they are, because they think that they can save their district's money by operating as a non-user, which is interesting. And so if you consider our membership in a co-op purely from the point of view of finances, which I'm not advocating, that's an interesting perspective. So Mike Semick is asking, so based on this analysis of finance, does it make sense for 115 and 67 and maybe 65 to submit our letter of resignation to NSSCD by the end of next month? Because you can only submit your letters of withdrawal from NSSCD on every December. That gives you 18 months, so 2 Junes later, you'd be done with being in the cooperative. And the argument is, well, if we're going to lose all this money and be left potentially holding the bag if we're the only member still in there, shouldn't we leverage the power of now 112, 109, 67, 115, and 65 as a group approach NSSCD to say we need changes and we need changes made fast and in this direction, and tell them what we want. Again, I think it's an interesting perspective to consider. I'm a little concerned about, we're only talking about this from a financial perspective. And the bottom line is, if Alan's numbers are pretty close, he's not really talking about us saving all that much money, about 40,000 plus or minus some odd amount of dollars, by purchasing services from NSSCD as a non-user. So we avoid the IDEA fund issue.
Doesn't the structure of the payments change if those two large districts pull out?
That's where I'm going. So now I'm going to say, so this whole meeting started, thanks for the lead-in, perfect.
Yeah.
So the whole meeting was going 90 miles an hour, like, oh my God, we're going to lose our shirts, we're going to be left holding the bag. And The numbers for 115 and 67 were not all that huge either in amount of money they were going to save. Yeah, Alan's, again, back of the envelope, rough calculations were roughly $64,000 for 67 out of $340,000 some odd dollars that they spend in terms of what he's calculating, and maybe $56,000 for 115. Not in terms of percentage savings, not that huge, perhaps relative to something as simple as just the hassle factor of administrating this thing on your own. So they were like running toward this, writing this letter, and finally, and I spent the whole meeting taking notes and saying, here's my response, but I didn't jump in because they were like going 100 miles an hour. It wasn't easy to interject. Finally, somebody, it was Alan actually said, "What does District 65 think?" So,
speaking on behalf of all 6,000
yeah, and so I said, I really can't speak on behalf of my board, but I can give you some of my personal opinions and as a board member on the governing board of NSSED. There's a couple things they need to consider, a number of things. If we pull out, if all these 5 districts pull out or just 3 districts pull out, it's very likely that NSSED will redo its pricing structure and charge non-member districts more to cover their lack of cost. So maybe this pricing model doesn't work. So this rough back of the envelope calculation doesn't work so well. It also assumes that the rules for non-member participation remain constant, that don't change over time. Because right now, members, one of the things to consider is members get priority. So if you have a high need, special needs kid come into your district that we cannot handle, and there are no private placement districts that meet our need, private placement facilities that meet our needs, and NSSED is going to help us out with that. Correct?
We have to, isn't it?
It's an insurance. One of the big reasons we use NSSED is the insurance policy kind of thinking there. Another reason that we got to be careful about moving so quickly is we have been, since last May, Kevin, Jean, and the 2 district reps to NSSED from 115 to 67, along with myself, we were talking about Kevin working with, I always forget these people's names.
Ingrid Weiler and Jean.
Yeah, those 2 guys in 67 and 115, putting together a situational assessment of what we do now, what we do in the future, and what NSSED does for us, and what does it cost us, and can we do it better ourselves? Does it make sense to do it better ourselves? And if we were to stay at NSSED, what would we like them to change? So there's a lot of things going on, and we were going to get the results of that you guys are all asked to put this on your calendar, January 22nd, right? Well, they want to move ahead before having this side of the coin. There's the finance side, very important. There's what's right for kids side, and only Kevin and only Ingrid and only Lauren can really tell us that, not the finance guys. I don't know how much Jay has had a chance to review the finance analysis, so I'd like to see some of that. So I'm very concerned about the rush. Jean has suggested over and over again to Mike and me and everybody that will listen that we need to do this thoughtfully and carefully, and we can accomplish the same thing if we choose to pull out next December. But we have yet to hear from our special ed people. Another thing that I pointed out to 67 115, which really stirred the pot because they were not ready for that, was, didn't we already do this in 2010 under the prior administration to force briefly, yeah, toward the end of it, but and they had such turnover in their district. It really seemed, except for Nikki Snoutland, who was the only person who was around at the time, they didn't seem to really have a good grasp on the effect that had in the community. The special education community really was up in arms over having, they learned about the 67, 115 and our intent to withdraw from NSSED. They learned about that from NSSED. They didn't learn about that from us. A little bit of that is NSSED administration playing hardball, but, which is kind of cocky on their part, but also on our oversight. If we're going to do something that signals a change in philosophical approach to the way we treat special ed kids, we need to have that community involved from the very beginning. The same way we have the community involved in any plans we have for the middle school. If we're thinking about changing middle school, we got to involve the community. If we're thinking about changing philosophical approach to special education, and they all went, oh, they got kind of scared by that. And then somebody else made the point was, And didn't we just go through that with our Mandarin program and how much grief they took for that? And we should learn from that. And then somebody else said, isn't the person who led the Mandarin program attack the same also on the LBA? And they're like, yes, that's a really good point. So that I think, I don't know that they've changed their mind, but I think we've given them some food for thought. I pointed out, as I do all the time with you guys, that I worry about minimal cost savings versus major administrative headaches. I talk about how lean we run, how much our administrators work and do. Is the extra 40, 50 grand or whatever it turns out to be worth the burden for us? I don't know. But we need to talk about that. It's not a yes or no, but there's a lot to consider.
Do you mean, sorry to interrupt you, do you mean the cost of administration for bringing all the services inside, or do you mean do it by doing it piecemeal where we're not a member but we pay per
I think all of that. I think it hasn't been fleshed out. We have not considered all the little pieces to this. Another thing that I pointed out to them, which just occurred to me when I was in that meeting, that the number of the administrators in Lake Forest kind of like turned their head and said, "Oh, crap, I hadn't thought about that." If 5 districts pull out of NSSED, and we don't have priority placement when we have kids with special needs to go into North Shore Academy, so that's their school, and we're looking at other placements, private sector placements. Well, if there's 5 districts now filling the marketplace or in the area with students, and there's, in general, there's probably a fixed number of desks at all the different private placements. There's going to be fewer choices for us to put kids, places to put kids. So
we're going to change the economics of the whole.
Yeah, because there's not a huge amount of supply. So the way we left it is they are still thinking we need to make a decision before December. They're trying to squeeze in another meeting before the end of December to make a call. I reiterated over and over again with Mike and the board to include Kevin and Jean in the conversation of developing a list. They want to approach. They sound like they're dead set of approaching administration at NSSED with here's what we need, here's what we want. Otherwise, we're going to do this. And I said, well, if nothing else, make sure you get our administration involved in that conversation to at least get some input on the questions you're asking. But I didn't promise or commit us to anything because we haven't heard anything. Our board hasn't had a conversation to decide if we want to move ahead with 67 and 115 blindly, or we want to go a little more slowly, more carefully.
So if we
So I think that's where
act by the end of December,
we missed the opportunity to submit a letter of withdrawal effective June of 2016 with the other groups.
But if we take some action
next December, but it puts us at the 17th.
18 months from next December.
But if we take some action, we still have a window of time before we actually have to do something, which is signal to them that look, you need to put us on the table for a negotiation here because we're not happy, right?
Yes, you can. Another thing I don't know if we pointed out in the past, but just it's worth remembering. If you submit a letter of resignation, of withdrawal, you can rescind it, as 112 has done, and we did the last time we went through this. However, we did that once, and it kind of turned out that when we started that process last time, we were serious. We thought we were going to pull out, and we got into it and realized, holy cow, this is a lot of work. Maybe we need to be careful. So they played out the last part of it, a bit of a bluff, as a way to force NSSED to start rethinking its pricing model, because that's what got the whole thing going years ago, and they changed it a little bit. Not enough, but it started the ball rolling. So, and now NSSED is like, well, they kind of figured out that it was bluff. And I don't know that we can play that hand again the same way.
That's a bluff, but as an opportunity to really look at
Right,
it.
but if we decide to put in our paperwork, we've got to be prepared to go all the way if it comes down to that. You know what I mean?
We have to have plans in place. I mean, literally, we have to be committed to our kids being here 18 months from the letter.
And one of the
because
things,
you feel like that if we were to
Rescind,
stop being
or
members,
even stop for a
that
month
they would
and then
no longer take
rejoin.
our students. Because I would think
Yeah,
that if everybody does that, it's just going to be a change in the pricing structure. They're still going to take our kids. It's just going to be
maybe.
We don't know. So they would just go out of existence.
Another dose of perspective, just so everybody knows. Right now, Kevin, help me out with this ballpark, but right now we're into NSSED for about 200 grand a year, plus or minus, right? It's in that range. It's not the biggest nut on our
Plus tuition.
plus.
Are you talking about?
I think that's the total. I think that's the total thing that was on Tim's spreadsheet.
I will pull it up. I think I think that
it's not as big. It's for the amount of time we spent talking about it. It seems disproportionate.
So
I would agree with you on that.
If I could just jump in here for a quick second,
Please.
I think that we are nothing as a community if we are not thoughtful. We have always thought things through very clearly, and we have always done what's best for kids, first and foremost, and thought about the financial picture, especially in something along this route after that. What can we do for kids? What's going to work best for kids? And then how can we pay for it? That's always been how it's been. And I think that when we met in May and Mark and Jean asked that I work with the two representatives from the Lake Forest districts to come
Which
up,
we had 2 Lake Forest board members at too.
to come up with a timeline and possible impact of what would happen if we stayed in the cooperative and what would happen if we pulled out of the cooperative. That the timeline for pulling out of the cooperative allowed us to be thoughtful and allowed us to engage with our community members and to talk with the special ed teachers and to talk with all of the parents and families of kids who we already have placed in North Suburban Special Education District programs. Without doing that, I think that it says something to our community. Not to mention the fact that I am less concerned about our districts being left to hold the bag, so to speak, of money at the end of 2016 because of the fact that one of their biggest line items is their superintendent's salary and his insurance package. It's going to cost the North Suburban Special Education District approximately $383,000 this school year. He has one more year on his contract.
His base is like $330,000.
That is what our IDEA dollars is going to cover. That is the biggest line item in the IDEA funds for the district.
But aren't they going to replace it?
Yes. They will replace him. They will replace
Hopefully
him with
not.
a person who is far younger and who
Not as
will
expensive.
not be paid at $383,000.
Presumably.
So the perspective here, I found the numbers on how much the dollars were into it for, and this is exclusive of all the miscellaneous services that they might buy. I believe don't think it includes like the OTPT and that kind of stuff. They've got us in for $174,000 as of the time that this big spreadsheet was put together that you've got.
Mm-hmm.
They've got like Forest in for $284,115 in for $284,000, and 67 in for $496,000. So it's just to give you perspective on the amount of money we're really talking. It could change dramatically if we had some high needs kids come into the district.
Well, I know we have
especially if we
already from that.
and especially if we chose to service them outside of.
So what do we need to do between now and the end of December?
Well,
as a board.
I need guidance, or Gina and I need guidance as to whether we're riding along with.
We will not have enough information together to present to you till January, because that's the date we agreed upon. To present, to look at it thoughtfully, because really when you talk to districts that have pulled from cooperatives, they start pulling programs for 2 to 3 years prior to that and start bringing them in their district and see how are we managing with this? What kind of work is involved?
Well, if we don't have enough information to make a decision until January, then
I want to just go back to giving some sort of conditional notice, and I don't know that we need to be cute about it. I think we're quite forthright, and here is our notice. We are pulling out, but understand that we want to engage with you. We want to preserve we want to preserve our right to pull out in 18 months, and we'd like to engage, and then we can go whichever way we want, because I'm skeptical of the premise that they wouldn't take us back if we wanted to come back. It seems to me they would.
Yeah,
So that would give us
okay.
leverage and it would give us all options as opposed to waiting, in which case we have no leverage and limited options.
But Jean and Kevin have made it clear to me that they're concerned about 18 months not being enough time to pull this all together.
Well, in which case perhaps we
together
could
to bring all the
extend
kids back in, or to pull it together to make it
When
you
submit a letter,
No, to make it.
you have to do
yes.
a plan. You have to come up with a very detailed plan on how you will be able to bring the kids back to the school district.
And the plan can't be, we'll pay non-member rates.
Right.
No.
You have to have a very
There are-
detailed plan.
Go ahead, Julie, I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry.
There are 9 different areas that we would have to demonstrate that we are prepared to move forward with. The process is a longer process. So as soon as we give our notice to NSSED, then within 2 to 3 months of that, then it is put before the other boards of education for the members of the cooperative. If even one member district votes no, which we already have indication that at least one member district would vote no, then it goes to a process with the regional offices of education. So there would be 2 involved in this situation. One of them is the lake, and one of them is the North Cook Intermediate Service Center. We would have a hearing before each of those governing bodies, at which we would present a proposal for our how we would service our kids. If and when we made it past those steps, then there is a final hearing before the Illinois Student Assistance Commission for Persons with Disabilities, which you submit all of your information. It's a large compilation of all of the work that you do and how you plan to service students without the use of the cooperative, because in the end, what the state is worried about is how we spend our federal IDEA dollars. In order for the state to continue to get those dollars, every district that they give those dollars to, right now they're giving them to NSSED, and then NSSED gives them to us. Every district has to guarantee that they're using those dollars appropriately. And that's not something that the state or the federal government take very lightly. So it is a process and a half, and requires time and energy, which again, all of us are willing to put in the time and energy to do that. I would just ask that it be a thoughtful process and that it be done with the input of a variety of stakeholders so that we can move forward with that.
One question. I'm trying to wrap my head around all this. I'm trying to figure out how big of a plan and how much energy has to go into it if we only spend $200,000 on it.
It's the same whether it's $200,000 or $1 million.
You have to have the same plan.
But I mean, isn't this we can live with the consequences of staying in one more
for a year?
Because
if it hit the fan and 4 districts pulled out and we did not,
right.
And we're left with a reduced cooperative of 14 school districts, and the fixed costs get spread around, we would only bear that out for 1 additional school year. And we waited until next December to put in our time. In the worst case, we hold it back for a year.
But if Lake Forest moves forward and we don't, will we lose the opportunity to build something with them?
No, I don't know the answer to that. I doubt it. Again, like you said, I
can build it
would doubt that they would say no.
It sounds like there should be some pressure on NSSED to alter their fee structure.
Oh yeah,
and it's not working.
That's all we keep saying to them.
What other way? Right. So I've been hearing that conversation since I joined the board. So what other way do we have to communicate that we seriously want them to work on that?
You know, there are some things that sometimes I wonder if I should say it out loud, but it doesn't matter. I'm going to say it out loud. A big part of the problem is their current superintendent. He is a lame duck.
When's he leaving? He has a date certain.
June of 2016, along with these other 2 districts. And I hate to say
that timeline,
but he's riding his time.
Difficult for
and
us.
to get it, and he's come out and said it, that you can't make everybody happy. We have enough votes to pass the new pricing structure. We're bringing it to the board next month. And yes, it's a step in the right direction. We benefit a teeny bit, but really it's a wash. Big districts benefit a fair amount, little districts don't. And we took a straw poll more or less last time, and there are the votes to pass the new structure, which I guess moves us in the right direction, but I think he thinks he's satisfied when that's done. And so it's unfortunate that we have to say these things, but that's the reality that we're faced with, and I'm not sure how to move it forward without threatening them, but can't we all play in the sandbox like adults and make this happen, you know what I mean?
Here's what I would suggest we do. I would suggest that we come up with a pros and cons kind of sheet, and just make it simple. Kevin, you and I and Jake can put that together, and we can bring it to the COW meeting in December and talk about it. And then we still have a week if we decide we're going to submit a letter to do that.
Okay.
That's what I think.
Despite the fact that I understand your conversation regarding numbers, I'd like to see some numbers attached to those alternatives.
So maybe we can get
to the alternatives for their funding?
No, your pros and cons. And
Oh, okay.
you've got a couple
I'm
questions.
good with that.
Okay.
I'm not good with looking at their numbers.
No, I don't care with them, just our numbers. What's it going to cost us?
I mean, it may not, we may decide too that it's not the time to take it on, given other objectives that we have in the next year, including collective bargaining, which will take, a fair amount of time.
That was a point that 67 made, which I thought was a very good point. They've just recently completed their strategic plan where they have a lot of resources dedicated to very specific things. And do they want to really take this on? Because that's going to divert resources away from strategic plan issues that are already on the agenda. So.
Can we piggyback our plans with theirs?
Well, if we're all on the same page going in, I think that's kind of the hope, that we can plan together as a tri-district to figure this all out, right? If we're on the page going in.
Kevin had something to say.
Just the timing of our committee of the whole meeting in December is December 9th, and the board meeting is scheduled for December 16th. That will put if the board were to decide that on December 16th that we wanted to give withdrawal notice, it would put an extremely tight time frame. There's an awful lot of legal paperwork actually that needs to be drawn up.
Just for that notice?
Just for that notice, because it's an official withdrawal resolution. We cannot use the one that's in the file from before, and it cannot be with an attorney that currently represents the district in any way or any of the other NSSED member districts.
We can't use Hodges
and so,
because Hodges represents NSSED.
And so all that I would ask is then,
I have an attorney.
is it the permission then that we would begin to at least talk with that attorney and draw up those papers in the opportunity that the board moves forward?
So these big dogs pull out, right? That's going to shake things up. So the question is whether when the big dogs are pulled out, we want to be inside the walls trying to help structure it, or we want to be outside saying, what are you going to do?
I think the people who have already submitted their letters, if the right moves were made internally, they'd stay. 112 has already pretty much said that.
So I don't know.
Is it better to stick it out and fix it, or to pull out and do it yourself?
Seems like
right?
for 200 grand. Worst case scenario, what, 250? I don't know.
But I thought I understood you to say that under the pricing model, we could do these on an a la carte basis, and it would
More
be
or less.
even cheaper.
And doing it that way, it looks like we save court. And this is not our business manager's numbers. This is back of the envelope, rough draft, somewhere in the neighborhood of $40,000.
So that would be cheaper, and it would have continuity of service and ease of administration. So,
But let me give a scenario.
We wouldn't be guaranteed a spot for our kids, first of all.
And that's the biggest piece, because I need to share with you. And I've had phone calls from a couple parents that their kids are in classrooms with some of the kids as we provide interventions to see if they can stick it out on regular ed or if we have to move them to a different placement. So let's say little Mark all of a sudden gets in all of our classes, and the teacher's spending all of their time with little Mark.
Yeah.
And Mark is doing things in class that distracts all of our learning. And our administration, Dr. Rubenstein, says we need to place Mark in a different placement, and now he's calling placements and we can't find a placement for him. Then what?
Well, what's the likelihood? I understand the mark is a high likelihood. How hard is it to place these
Very.
students?
If you're not a member of a cooperative, it's very hard. There are no guarantees. I know in my last district, and I was part of a cooperative, for very special schools, we sometimes would have to wait up to 2 to 3 months. And little Marky's still in class. That's Mark.
Talk to Mrs. Taylor, my fourth grade teacher.
I mean,
I don't know.
Decided preference on the part of the people in the know that deal with these issues and would have to deal with the withdrawal that you want it to stay with the status quo. I mean, that there's no secret about that. I'm not sure I've heard a super compelling reason not to do that, though I think it deserves, at least more consideration than it seemed to be given at the outset of the discussion. But having heard all of this and understanding the timing of it, I mean, it seems like it's unrealistic to kick it into December and be able to carry it off by December 31st. So
That's how Kevin and I feel.
Even
But
if
Mark
somebody
feels
would
that
then
way.
defer to the end of next year and have the same conversation then, but have more time to.
Way
We're
more
gonna have all
prepared.
next
Way
year.
more prepared.
Well, way more prepared, and we will have seen how it shakes out when those big dogs play their card, right? I mean,
And we will involve the community of parents on this
Yeah.
issue. Because if we do this without asking them first, beware.
You made that get strong feelings in how you and Kevin feel for the last 40 minutes. No, but I understand how you feel about it, and it sounds like we come to a conclusion.
yeah.
So let's
But there's a
call
lot
it.
to talk about.
Let's call it now rather than coming back.
Right,
to the
right.
board. Yeah, we can get an attorney and start that.
Yeah, so let's talk about this again next.
We'll talk
In
about it
January,
throughout
January
next
22nd, we have a meeting on the calendar already with our tri-district.
And even if it's not with Lake Forest,
We'll do
we will
it.
still have a meeting.
Yeah, we have to.
Because we have to stay on top of it, and then we can make a decision next year with having all the data.
If they don't bring their boards, I'll get their NSSCD reps to come.
If nothing further changes between now and December 9th, then I think we know the direction that we're getting. I would like to just say that if something changes, and it sounds like this is a fairly fluid situation,
It changes every week.
we may need to talk about it.
And I do think alignment with the Lake Forest districts is important.
Yeah.
So I think we keep abreast of what they're
Yes.
doing.
And I
think
made that
we look
very
for
clear.
opportunities.
I made that very clear that we want to be involved in this conversation, part with them to the greatest extent possible.
Right.
So I encourage them throughout the meeting to please stay in touch with Kevin and Jean and keep us involved.
Insurance is even more important for a smaller organization, right? Because we have no float.
We have
One child makes a huge difference for us. That $40,000 insurance policy
You are absolutely correct.
pays off pretty quickly.
I do want to just clarify one more thing with that. Kevin and I were invited to that, but we were invited literally a week before it happened, and we already had the facilities planning set up for the middle school. And so Mark went to and Mark is really, he attends our meetings. He is very, very well versed in this issue.
So I think we've kicked that dead horse. Especially relative to the amount of money we spend on it. Should we move ahead?
And I just wanted, in my superintendent report, this is all I'm doing. Mark received the Master School Board Member certificate.
I did.
And he has a lapel pin that I
Oh,
expect him
excellent.
to wear here. So, along with thanking all of you and recognizing all of you for your service on Board Members Day, I would like to recognize you, and I would like to see your lapel pin this weekend.
I'm thinking about getting a sash.
Oh,
I
a
can
sash?
stand up and put pins
Mark,
on
you
it.
have to wear it to the conference.
Yeah, oh, for sure. Yeah.
I'll send a selfie with my pin.
Yes, please do. Maybe we'll tweet it out.
That's why we hired you.
Well, you get paid.
That's why I keep coming back. Okay, so now we're moving on to discussion item number 8A, levy discussion. Mr. Khan will answer questions regarding the levy. The board will be asked to approve the tentative levy later in the agenda.
So nothing's changed.
So this is what, our third time doing this?
So moved. It's kind of important because we talked about it before, and we had a good summary the last time.
Has anybody given this thought that has brought questions to mind?
No. I'm sick of it.
I'm sick of
it too.
I'm sick of it too.
Has anybody heard anything in the community that raised concerns?
They all love it.
Jay, would you like to add anything to that?
Good.
Good. All in favor?
Well, we'll do that. This is still discussion. So.
Okay. So.
All right. So you're good. All right.
Is there anything in that budget that concerns you? What? Is there anything in the budget that concerns you for future budgets? Are you? Do you look at this budget and think,
Levy.
3 years from now? Oh, levy is all right. Nix that.
I think we're comfortable with our recommendation because it provides us the leeway.
I'm going to withdraw my question.
We're all great.
Okay, item 8B. Mr. Khan will also now discuss his recommendation for streamlining the district's banking structure.
The material is very thorough.
Back in one of the first several meetings we did, I brought to you my priorities for my first 2 years, and one of the priorities it was mentioned for the fall of 2014 was to update our banking, to consolidate our bank accounts and simplify them and put in some additional fraud protection measures. So this is my attempt at doing that. I was initially intending to do an RFP where I go out to different banks and solicit multiple proposals in a competitive process. In talking with some of my colleagues, I came to realize that one, since it's not required that we do that, and then also that we don't really have the level of assets that would where we would benefit significantly from a competitive environment. I asked for some recommendations and looked at some of the banks that other people were banking with and just did some research. Found an old proposal in our office from Lake Forest Bank and Trust and went and spoke with them and they were able to meet all of my needs and requirements that I had going in. They gave us a very attractive rate in terms of compensating balances, and there's some other nice features. I can do much of the banking online in electronic form. There's a lot of security measures. They have fraud protection measures that I wanted, and managing our collateral will be quite a bit easier because of their unusual banking structure. They're a holding company with 15 different charters, so they can basically spread our money around and take advantage of the federal government's insurance.
Okay. Personally, we've been through this ourselves, I think.
I would like to go ahead with that bank, and
I concur.
Okay. The only other difference is that I would like to, and this is more of a policy, I believe it's already in our policy, to open an imprest account. That would be the one account that we don't currently have. And that's a account which has a limited dollar figure in it that we would write checks out of it that needed to be paid that couldn't wait for board meetings. So basically, it's a $5,000 checking account. You approve us to pay bills out of it up to that amount. Then we bring back the charges to you to approve at the following board meeting.
And I do think that's already in our policy.
Yeah, it is.
Is there, just a quick question, just to play a little devil's advocate, is there an argument from the other point of view that it would, for having more than one bank?
I don't think we're strong enough to.
Not a big one.
We're not
wag
big
any.
enough.
I mean, our investments are really somewhere else, so they're not competing in terms of rate.
I believe you. All right, thanks, Jay. Item 8C, Dr. Sophie will now discuss the board planning calendar.
And I'm going to point out, Terry and I now, as we're getting in sync with doing things, I'm bringing the board planning calendar back. It reflects a year of strategic planning reports. So I will put this on the regular board meeting agenda every month, and we will tweak it and get it to a point where you know what's coming every month.
Well done.
Great. I have one question.
Yes.
Why is the middle month of every quarter way bigger than the other two?
That's a good question.
All right.
We don't know, but I will tell you the other thing is,
Somebody fix that, please.
I think we're gonna change it so it's easier to read, and so January will be all the way across, February will be all the way across.
I would appreciate that. The formatting is.
Look here.
Looks good.
All right.
We will
You got
fix
your
that.
feedback, good.
So moved.
Okay, now back to Mr. Khan and Dr. Sophie will report on the LBMS facility report and the community engagement night with White Architects and our committee from the community.
Jane, how about if I give a little bit of that and you add just anything? We had Craig Sipka, architect, very passionate.
This was last Wednesday, right? The night
Last Thursday, the night of the
that we had
Lake
Lake Forest.
We had Brad Paulson, who is one of the principals and who was also a board member in Wheaton, came and really did work with, there were about 13 or 14 stakeholders, talking about what are you most proud of in Lake Bluff, what do you want to preserve, what kinds of changes, what did you see in the plans. They got a lot of feedback, which they have not shared with us yet. I have a new list because I've added about 6 people after the list I sent you. So we have people that have kids in school, we have people that don't have kids in school, we have one of our concerned citizens, we have 3 or 4 neighbors that surround middle school. We have somebody from, I forget what you guys call it here, the zoning committee. Right, so, and basically it was one of these, it's something the architects needed to hear from all of us prior to all this important work as they start talking to us about different environments. So the next step is really to set up site visits, to look at some of the things they showed us, for instance, what it might look like to change the library around, what different entrances to buildings look like, etc. So as soon as I hear back from them in the next week, we'll be scheduling some site visits, and everybody that's on the committee will be invited. Leanne usually sits on that one. We also competed that night with the Lake Forest Board meeting, the high school play, and the 3rd grade musical. So I'm hoping the next night we have our site visits during the day that we don't have too much competition for that. Did I miss anything in that?
No. And what was the buzz among the community members who attended? What was the feeling?
I got very positive feedback. In fact, I had 3 emails saying they felt psyched after the
How many people other than the white architect guys were there?
There were about 13, of which the 3 of us were part of that. So 10, maybe more.
Yeah, there was a conflict with a basketball game or something, so we didn't have quite as many community members at this meeting, but the ones that were there.
Oh, there was a basketball game too?
Well, I forget what it was, but
the play.
Oh, the play.
The
Sorry.
Lake Forest play. So I think we'll get more, and it's a process.
And your next meeting is scheduled for when?
We are waiting for White because we're going to do 2 days of site visits, like 2 half days.
With the community members as well?
With whoever's on this committee will be invited.
That's very cool. All right. So when do you come back to the board? Something to say?
I think White may be back in December to report out to you. So I have to touch base with them. I'm still waiting for the feedback from the meeting.
Other questions? All right, we're going to move on to the ISAT comparison report. Agenda item 8E. Dr. Rubenstein will now present to the board the ISAT scores in comparison to neighboring districts. Thank you, Dr. Rubenstein.
Discussing the fact that it appears a little bit different on my computer screen, and so I may not live through this presentation.
I'm sure you will. I have every confidence.
I'm confident that none of you will hurt me. There is. I'm not so confident about other things. So I'm pleased to report to you this evening some comparisons of our students and how they performed in the spring of ISAT scores. This is the last time that I will ever talk with you about ISAT. Fantastic. So about the other districts, you have this information in your board packet this evening. The other districts that we compare ourselves to, and just some of their demographic information. Lake Forest 67, Libertyville, Lincolnshire 103 is not one of our comparables, but we included in there North Shore 112, Oak Grove 68, Wilmette 39, and Winnetka 36. And then the 4 districts that are listed at the bottom are other high-achieving districts, some of them with similar demographics, and so we have included those in there for comparison's sake. As you may recall, a year ago, we were near the bottom amongst our comparison districts. We had approximately 82.5% of our students meeting or exceeding state standards. Our teachers worked really hard with our students during the past year, and I'm pleased to report that we are now much closer to the middle and have surpassed the Lake Forest School District, which is really exciting for us. Lake Bluff School District 65 posted significant gains on the assessment during this last year. 87% of our students met or exceeded state standards, and this was with, again, new higher cut scores and an assessment that was 100% Common Core aligned. So it was one of those things we didn't know what to expect. And so we're very, very pleased that 87% of our students posted scores that were in the meets or exceeds category. During the current school year, Illinois moved to a growth model. A growth model places points on the number of students that move from the meets category to exceeds category. So for every student that we did that with, if we moved them from the meets to the high exceeds, we would get 150 points. They average all of our points and come up with a growth score over time.
This is the growth score determined? Is it a function of the change between 2013 and 2014? So the basis for the growth are the numbers that are generated.
Sort of indirectly. While we can have more students meet or exceed, our growth score may stay relatively the same because of the way that the state measures growth. So to have a high growth score, you need to move a high number of kids from the meets category to the exceeds category. And that might not necessarily be reflected in the 87%, because if we already had kids meeting or exceeding, those would have been...
But they use the ISET results to determine growth.
Yes, okay. That's correct. Okay. So of the districts that we compare ourselves to, we were at the top for our math growth scores. Something that is absolutely positively outstanding to be proud of, even as you look at the other districts in our area and where they were at with their growth scores. If you can believe it, I mean, this is the average. So Lake Bluff Middle School posted a growth score of 113. Lake Bluff Elementary School's growth score was 120.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
How will this be communicated from a public relations perspective to our parents?
I will talk about that in just a second, but we plan to send all of this information out tomorrow or later on this week to all of the district stakeholders, and with a lot of press releases and great fanfare.
That includes the non-users?
That includes the non-users as well.
Okay.
The non-users that we have addresses for, but we can also include it in the next version of On the Bluff or
that's what I think, because we are sending it to everyone that's on our contact list. But I do think we want to put this on in the next On the Bluff.
That'd be something, if it were in print, would maybe be easier for the realtors to use.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I agree.
We are exceedingly proud of our math growth scores and where our students have done. This is again something that Jean and I have known about for quite some time. Actually, in May, as we were getting our MAP scores back, I could tell and sat with Jean and said, I think that our scores are going to really come in strong. All of the indicators that we had internally about where our students were at were right on track to be at about this number, and so really quite exciting for us to actually post those gains and to be at the top of the comparison group.
In math.
In math, in the area of math. And for all of us who have heard all of the recent news reports about new math and the way that it's done, and Common Core math is not good for kids, and who have come to the board meetings in recent years or talked with any member of our faculty or staff about what we're doing with math and thinking that it's not right. This is proof positive that what we are doing in math is working, and that's something that we have a lot to be proud of. In the area of reading, we've still got some work to do. And we are doing that work right now. We posted a growth score that was, again, slightly above Lake Forest's, but not enough to put us in the highest group. But again, something to be proud of. It is something that you'll see later on in the presentation that is a strong focus for us right now.
I'm covering what you guys already talked about, but I make sure I understand this. This growth is a change in the growth, or
It's based upon the number of kids we move from the meets to the exceeds.
So in other words, if we already had a high percentage of kids in that exceeds, it would be very difficult for us to have a good score here.
High growth because you can't.
Even if we had way more kids in exceeds than this other guy who moved a bunch.
This is, I actually knew this, that there were going to be some questions. So this is actually the state growth chart that they used to determine those growth scores. So if a student scores in the meets range in the first year, which is along the left-hand side, and then again scores in the meets range in year 2, which is the grade across the top, then we get a score of 100 for them. If we move them from the meets range to the high meets range, then we get 130 points for each of those students, and they take an average. This is the state's growth model there. It is a little bit confusing, but far better than just a status score of you have 87% of your kids meeting or exceeding.
But it feels like you have to look at both to really get the...
Absolutely.
I agree.
And under the new law that is going on, there is a great deal of talk and focus on growth scores. So.
And all these comparisons are not available to us next year.
Right, because the ISAT.
Next year we start all over from scratch.
With Park?
Park.
Which we still don't know the content of the test.
We know what's on the test, it's just we don't know how all the reporting's going to look. And it's like you can't compare apples with oranges. So.
Correct. In our, did you have a question about that, Susan?
No.
Okay. In our special education meets and exceeds category, we again posted significant gains. We are still making gains. 49% of our special education students met or exceeded state standards. A recent question that somebody else had about our special ed scores, I want to point out that approximately 10% of our kids are included in the special education subgroup. The districts that are more towards the top, like Rondout and Lincolnshire and Winnetka and Oak Grove, also have higher percentages of kids that they classify as special education students. And so it is easier for them in some ways to go up. Our group of kids with disabilities are truthfully a group of kids with disabilities, and it is exceedingly hard to help them to move and grow and exceed the standard on these assessments.
What's the absolute size of that group in numbers? How many kids?
I know on the chart that we gave in closed session, as we were talking about negotiations, it listed 8% for special ed.
So about 60 kids?
60 kids who took the assessment. We have just under 100 kids who are receiving special education services in the district.
Do we know how those numbers vary by building?
Vary by building. It is actually, there are more students who are identified in the middle school, and that's just the nature of special education. We do a lot of early intervention work so that students don't require special education services or a label, so to speak. So the numbers are, while they might end up being fairly equal for the buildings, it's a higher percentage at the middle school.
I was actually thinking of the scores. We have enough for this cut. Is the number too small to give us?
Number is too small, and we'll have to go back and check, but I'm not sure that they broke them out that way for us. But I can double check on that. The limited English proficient subgroup meets and exceeds. Again, we went up. 53.5% of our students in that subgroup went up. Another thing that's important to point out here is that as Illinois was given a waiver by the federal government for the No Child Left Behind Act, and we were allowed to use growth scores. Another part of that waiver was that they lowered the number of kids that are counted in a subgroup. So the number of kids in a subgroup is now, according to the waiver, 25 rather than the 45. And that's something that is consistent with the proposed Elementary Secondary Education Act reauthorization that may be coming through Congress very soon. Low income meets and exceeds, again, about 51.5% of our students in that subgroup are meeting or exceeding. And just some brief future plans. We had the first day of our differentiated professional development today with Janice Heigl, who comes to us from Oregon and Washington State. Differentiated professional development in that we are using a different model rather than having teachers in a conference room sitting and getting a lot of information. They are actually observing their fellow colleagues in the classroom and then giving feedback to those colleagues and then going out and teaching another lesson. Constantly using a Japanese lesson study model, which has proven to give great gains, and so we will continue to implement Bridges Second Edition, an Agile Mind with a strong focus on differentiated PD. In the area of reading and language arts, we've got to identify areas for growth. One thing that we know and that we will talk about with our communities as we talk about these scores is that we have really increased the amount of writing that is going on across the curriculum this year. And so as we do that, we know that kids who are great writers are also great readers. And so as we increase the amount of writing that's going on across the curriculum, we would expect that our reading scores will also go up exponentially. Continue to work with colleagues in selected high-achieving benchmark districts to better understand how they've improved student learning and further examine data for students with IEPs to determine necessary programming changes in the coming years. There are a couple of things that we need to adjust and really take a much closer look at for the special education subpopulation. And there are some teacher conversations that honestly need to be had about what works for kids. And it is a constant, there's an ongoing conversation, I will say, amongst the administrators with every teacher about doing what is right for kids because everybody wants to do what's right. And everybody has their own personal philosophy about what is working and what's not working. And so really further digging into the data and looking at some possible programming changes in the coming years.
This probably isn't something that we need to discuss tonight, but I was curious about why only half of our lower income kids, and maybe it's language related, maybe it's something else, meet or exceed expectations compared to 85% or 87% of our other kids. Is there any insight in that?
Lots of research. There's lots of research in that area.
So, correct. And so approximately half of our kids who are in our ELL subpopulation are, in order to be in the ELL subpopulation, you have to consistently underperform on what's called the access assessment. So the access assessment is given in January and February to all of our students with English language learning needs, and it's a measure of language proficiency. So our ELL students are not demonstrating a proficiency with language, period, and yet they are expected to take the same rigorous assessments that every other student is. So for our students with English language learning needs to not be able to read a passage and comprehend it fully would be expected. It doesn't mean that we are not going to work as hard as we possibly can to make sure that they do well. If you compare us with some of those other school districts, their ELL population is a different sort of ELL population. So for example, in Avoca and Lincoln Charter school districts, their biggest ELL subpopulation is for students who are Mandarin Chinese speakers.
I was more interested in low income. The next slide.
I'm sorry. And so our low income students, I will say that while the two circles, if we had a circle of students who were classified as low income and a circle of students who were non-English speakers, while the two circles are not overlapping completely, there's lots of overlap there. And so that is something, we know that the population of students who are classified as low income are also our English language learners, probably 8 times out of 10.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good.
Questions or concerns from anybody?
Excellent.
Yeah, congratulations on the growth. That's great.
Keep up the
Good job.
All right. Item 8F, policy 7190, student discipline.
Self-explanatory.
It's good
It's
to
just changing the names. Excellent. So moved.
That's next.
Policy committee, have anything to add to that?
Nope.
I see somebody's got paper out.
Oh, okay. So wait,
This is just one we didn't get this summer.
okay. So this is the first we're seeing of it.
It's just changing the name. That's all we're doing.
Okay.
Unless Julie would like to take the...
Well, I did have some comments.
Then I would suggest
Bring it
we
to-
approve it tonight for the names and then bring it. Terry Hodges is going to be at our next meeting.
Okay.
And she's going to be discussing several of our policies.
Okay, that's fine. That's good.
Anybody else?
Because the student discipline ties in with the bullying, which ties in with these harassment. So she's covering all of that.
Okay.
Good question, and I should have put that in here.
Okay. We're good? Moving on to action items, everybody? Yep. You're going to be holding on your seats, but you're going to go through this like a tornado. Action item 9A, approval of the resolution for a tentative tax levy. So we have discussed the levy to death, and we now need to tentatively approve it, correct?
Yes.
So, you've all seen it, you've all had any questions. Anybody else have any last minute questions before we ask for a motion?
I think we just need the motion.
Okay, may I have a motion to approve the tentative tax levy as presented by the administration tonight and for the past several meetings?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Okay, John and Rich. Madam Secretary, may we please have a roll call vote?
Julie Gadshaw.
Yes.
Richard Haig.
Yes.
John Rosen.
Yes.
Susan Ryder.
Yes.
Leanne Charlo, yes.
Mark Barry?
Mark Berry.
Yes.
You don't get to
I've been so quiet tonight we didn't notice.
The motion is approved. All right, 9B, approval of date for tax levy hearing. May I have a motion? Well, is there anything you want to add to this? We're asking about a motion to approve a tax levy hearing which is required by law for December 16th, 2014 at 6:45.
You are correct.
Jay, or anybody need to add anything to that?
Just want to add that the tax levy hearing is not required because we are not increasing our taxes by more than 5% over the last extension, but we're having one anyway in the interest of transparency.
That's the right thing to
And
do.
best practices.
And best practices.
Excellent.
Okay. May I have a motion to approve the tax levy hearing to be held Tuesday, December 16th, 2014 at 6:45 p.m. at Lake Bluff Village Hall?
So moved.
Second. So, Julie and John,
I got it.
roll call vote, please.
Richard Haig.
Yes.
John Rosen.
Yes.
Susan Ryder.
Yes.
Mark Berry.
Yes.
Leanne Sherlow, yes. Julie Gottschall.
Yes.
Motion is approved. 9C, approval of annual statement of affairs. The motion, can Jay or Jean give us some background on that very quickly? The 2-second version.
Annually, the district's required to publish the annual statement of affairs in the newspaper and send it to ISB, and then as well keep it in the office for community members to view if they wish. And it's basically a listing of some district information of salaries of individuals and vendors where we spend, who we spend money with.
So it's kind of a transparency document.
Right.
It really is. That's a good.
Questions? Okay. May I have a motion to approve the annual statement of affairs as presented by the administration per board policy 4:10?
So moved.
John.
I'll second it.
Thank you.
Roll call vote, please.
John Rosen.
Yes.
Susan Ryder.
Yes.
Mark Berry.
Yes.
Leanne Sherlow, yes. Julie Gottschall.
Yes.
Richard Haig.
Yes.
Okay, the motion is approved.
Can I interject for D? I have to apologize to Julie. I know why she's confused because D is the one for the name change in the policy. I had put student discipline on here hoping we would have a couple minutes to talk about it prior to Terry Hodges coming, but we'll add it with the harassment because it ties in with that anyway. This item D is the one with the name change.
All right. So we're approving policy 2:260 for uniform grievance procedure, and the only change is name changes in the people that get notified and are responsible for it. Okay, so we have a motion to approve the first read policy 2:260 uniform grievance procedure.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Susan Ryder.
Yes.
Mark Berry.
Yes.
Leanne Sherlow, yes. Julie Gottschall. Richard Haig.
Yes.
And John Rosen.
Yes.
All right, motion is approved. 9E, approval of personnel report for November. May I have a motion to approve the personnel report for November as presented by the administration? This includes...
And you should have a new copy of the new personnel report as we had a certification issue finally resolved.
So this includes 2 certified employees for recommendations for leave of absence. Paige Soule, who is the library media specialist at the elementary school, effective October 15th, 2014. It's an intermittent leave through December 19th of 2014. And Jenny Lee, a speech and language pathologist at the elementary school, effective March 30th, 2015. And that is a FMLA, Family Medical Leave Act, for 9 weeks until the end of the year.
And you've been one.
So moved.
I gotta finish. And it also includes certified employee for recognition for hire for Corinne Horner, a Spanish teacher at the middle school, effective November 18th, 2014, replacing Jamie Schultz, who is going from full-time substitute due to Illinois licensing issues to a full-time teacher position.
Actually, Jamie left in June and Corinne has been the permanent sub until we had our certification issue resolved. So we're set.
Okay.
All right, second.
We have both?
Yep.
Okay, roll call vote, please.
Mark Berry.
Yes.
Leanne Sherlow, yes. Julie Gottschall.
Yes.
Richard Haig.
Yes.
John Rosen.
Yes.
Susan Ryder.
Yes.
You guys laugh at me for going fast. All
No
right.
problem. Keep it up.
Approval of consent agenda. First of all, is any of these consent agenda items tonight include district and school report cards, regular board event meeting minutes from October 28th, 2014, closed session minutes from October 28th, 2014, superintendent evaluation committee minutes from October 30th, 2014, P-card report, bills payable report, and the October's treasury report. Are any of these things something you'd like to pull out and not have in the consent agenda to discuss?
No.
All right. May I have a motion to approve the consent agenda items for October 28th, 2014 as presented by the administration? And I've already listed them.
So moved.
Second. Roll call, please.
Leanne Charlo, yes. Julie Gatchall?
Yes.
Richard Haig?
Yes.
Jen Rosen?
Yes.
Susan Ryder?
Yes.
Mark Barry? Yes.
Oh yeah, Mark Berry. It's not personal.
The invisible president.
I'm supposed to start with a different person for every vote. I can't remember who I just think that's so funny.
Agenda item 10A, FOIA request. We have none. Agenda item 11, public comments. If anybody would like to address the board, please do so now. Don't see anybody coming to the board. So we'll move on. May I have a motion to adjourn this Board of Ed meeting for, well, before I say that, does anybody else have any concluding remarks or comments or concerns that they want to bring up? Okay. May I have a motion to adjourn this meeting for November 18th, 2014 at 9:18 p.m.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Against? Opposed? We are now closed. We are now.
Terry, do we have a signing folder tonight?
On all of the